Good morning, everybody. Good morning, my esteemed panelists. I think they've already done introductions, which is quite cool. I just want us to get straight into it. So we're talking about riding the AI wave, and there's a lot that is happening within the space. And with that being mentioned, there's just a few topics that I would just want us to touch on. Let's see how we can actually deep dive into this AI. The goal of the session really is for us to have proper conversations, and as for the audience, if we can just start preparing our questions for the last few sessions. So I think just starting off in terms of the role of AI in your individual organizations, and I think certainly we look at customer services and personalization. What I'm really interested in knowing is that from a systematic and strategic perspective, how are you guys handling this construct when we look at customers and how we actually use personalization? And also if you can just give us practical examples that you guys have implemented in your different organizations so that we can see how you guys are actually riding on this AI wave. I'll start off with you, Marijke, on your side.
Thank you very much. So in corporate and investment banking and in wealth, at the heart of our strategy, we acknowledge that that is an advisory business, which means, therefore, that we really need to understand our clients, but also understand everything that happens within the bank, so that when we actually connect with our clients, we have a holistic view. And in that, we have been able to very successfully, I actually heard Johnson also speaking about it, we have used D365, which is also Salesforce for not Microsoft. So we have used D365, and we have augmented that with Copilot. And we have started using the combination thereof, and also Microsoft has what is called Power Apps. So we have combined Power Apps, some of the connectors that they have available. So really powerful, democratized IT. So it doesn't have to go deep into development. Our business stakeholders can do that. And we've combined D365 Power Apps and Copilot. And in that, we have started creating an enhanced interactive case management capability, which therefore equips our coverage bankers in engaging our clients better, but also in a real-time manner, understand what's happening with the clients and where there are failures in actually supporting them picking it up. Then I cannot resist adding another item, and it's not in the clients, but it is beneficial to clients. And what we have started seeing is that when we start using these tools in our engineering space, and in particular where we have distinguished or advanced engineers, we have started seeing that the ability to deliver faster code in quality, to Johnson's point, making sure that there's faster value for our clients. We have seen that AI has also started helping us there.
Try that. I was just saying that I like the fact that you guys decided to use like low code in terms of using apps, because with the skill shortages, I'm sure that that's helping you quite a lot there. And then I'll come to you, Ridwaan, in your space. What are you guys doing there?
Yeah, thanks. Testing. There we go. Thought I was going to have to shout. Thanks, Marianne. I think, like Marijke was saying, we've started by enabling our relationship banking environment. So a lot of the engagement with our customers, where we've got the more relationship type, longer duration transactions, we started enabling those bankers with insights using AI capabilities so that they understand the customer more holistically, understand their full portfolio of products, and then opportunities where we can engage for the next best product, the next best action. So I think that's been a really interesting use case for us. We started to see, cross-sell and upsell opportunities come from that enablement, and it's adding value for the customers. We're doing a significant amount of work in our everyday banking business around hyper-personalization. So that's a big area of focus for us, looking at addressing, the customer market of one. We're starting to find, and I'm sure across many of our organizations, this kind of broad, old-school method of segmentation of customers into the LSMs or whatever other segmentation methodologies you use don't necessarily work as effectively anymore. So it's about addressing the customer where they are, personalizing the products that they see in the app, personalizing the offers that they see in the app, and we're starting to see the traction in that space. And then I think one of the strategies we've taken from a technology perspective is, number one, looking at products like Copilot and Power Apps and those sorts of things and how you embed them into the workflow. But I think, and it's probably scary to say this given that ChatGPT launched less than a year ago, with a lot of fanfare, but I think some of those services are becoming commoditized. So with things like Copilot, it's a race to the bottom. It's about how do you land those at lowest cost into your organization, embed it. Then it's about for us looking for partners with embedded capabilities on top of platforms that we use already, our CRM platforms and other things where we can take advantage of their investment that they're making in that space and implement effectively into the organization. And then the last piece is around the experimentation. Where do we give our really smart engineers and our really smart business and strategy colleagues the opportunity to start to experiment with these sort of capabilities and look for that bleeding edge innovation? So those are the 3 areas we look to play with it in.
Okay, cool. No, that is interesting. And then, Benjamin, on your side, what are you guys doing?
Thanks, Marianne. So we've started with this journey about last year, June. We looked at a omni-channel solution that really creates a single view of the customer. And I think for us, there was literally 3 learnings that we needed to, or three things that we needed to look into our approach. Number one was our strategy, so building with the end in sight, and really just thinking through around not just about what we're trying to solve for today, but also what we're trying to solve for long term. Number 2 for us was really our cultural milieu and clearly understanding that, because again, it's not just around putting the technology on the table, but it's around how we actually take people on the journey with us, around the skill sets, around the new thought processes. And I think lastly for us was really around some of the ethical considerations, and some of the stuff we'll talk about later. But it was really around not just looking at it throughout the journey, but actually looking at it now. Because all of the technologies today has ethical considerations or ethical considerational lens that you've got to put onto that. And that for us was quite important. I think being a smaller player in the South African market, for us was, we really wanted about 3 things out of it. So number 1 was a much better customer experience and making sure that when that customer comes through, we already have that single view of the customer, which I know a lot of our counterparts are trying to get to. Number 2 for us was the business case didn't necessarily stack up for it to be cheaper and lower cost, right? And for us was actually more around cost avoidance. So when the scale comes that you have already built with the end in sight and you're able to actually then drive a lower cost to serve from the onset. And I think lastly for us was really just around that differentiator in the market, because it's product agnostic, and it's really the service capability and the customer experience plus the user experience that we've really wanted to change. It's still a journey, and I think there'll never be a kind of an end point, and I think that for me is where the power of AI and then also generative AI really plays into.
Okay, perfect. I think it's quite different views in a sense, but also very strategic in terms of how you guys are approaching it, which is quite nice. So just going into our second topic, when we talk about AI-driven innovations, especially in the risk space, right, for detecting fraud, what I actually just want us to touch on that is that how do you guys use technology to enhance traditional methods of risk assessment and fraud detection? But most importantly is that we cannot take for granted that the space is forever evolving. And with that, it means that we might need to actually start knowing how to handle ever-evolving patterns when it comes to fraud and risk. So I'm just interested in knowing how you guys are actually just staying abrupt when it comes to all of these things in a more innovative way. So Ridwaan, from your space, how you guys are doing that?
Thanks, Marianne. So actually, my last gig before coming to the Chief Data and Analytics Officer role was actually the CIO for the risk and compliance functions. And what's interesting is a lot of our risk colleagues have been playing in this AI, I'm going to call it AI space, for a much longer time. Back then, they just called it machine learning models, they called it modeling, but effectively, I mean, it's AI under the hood, or the broad definition of AI, encompassing some of this. And certainly in the fraud detection space, where, I mean, it's been there for some time, but the ability to predictively analyze customer transactions of things like transaction monitoring, looking for risk in that space, both in the payments chassis plus your regular transactions. I think what we're seeing a shift to now is deploying AI capabilities coupled with real-time streaming to be able to do these things in real time. And I think we're starting to see that ask from regulators as well. We've been talking to the Ghana regulator recently, where they're actually asking for real-time transaction monitoring. And the only way you're going to do that is with some level of predictive analytics, using your single view of customer and building up a customer profile that you can then predict the type of transactions, so that when you see these things coming in, you're able to pick up aberrations really quickly. I think there's a lot of good work going into the space. It's probably one of the more advanced spaces where AI has been deployed. It's not the kind of sexy Gen AI stuff and LLMs that is all the rage at the moment, but I think that's a space that's gotten a significant amount of investment.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And then Marijke, on your side, how are you guys handling that?
Yes, I think very similar to Ridwaan. Firstly, we have a partner which we procured the fraud monitoring system on for payments, for real-time payments and for card in particular, and that comes with machine learning. Of course, you need to then still make sure that you manage the rules very well and understand the rules. And I think it's a fine balance between client experience and protecting and trust. So that I think it's a continuous battle that nobody has really won yet. Of course, we are also very fortunate. We leverage the insights from our associations, which I know they share with every bank. But again, I think it's therefore a combination of using as much insights as you can, but also not having an information overload, because that again impedes speed. What we have now found is that particularly with combining ISO 20022 and enriching the data within the transaction flow, you of course can action it very, very immediately and therefore become far better in being proactive. The one area that we are really still struggling with, and most certainly where AI is not immersed as an obvious answer, is at the tail end. So now when a compromise has happened and you need to service recover or make sure that you try and assist the client because there is now some compromise in some form, I think that's still the last part where the questions are. And anybody who has an answer, we're very keen to understand and learn. Thank you.
I like that because it's the reality of the journey that we have to travel. There's some stuff that we will figure out along the way, and as how do we actually close that loop. And also the other thing that you've also mentioned, and I think both of you have mentioned it, is the use of partners, and it's like being very strategic in how you're actually dealing with it. Some things we can solve ourselves, however, there are certain things that we do just need partners in order for us to accelerate the conversations in our organizations. So thank you for that. So when we look at challenges and opportunities, when it comes to thank you. What are you guys actually seeing, right? When you look at AI, everybody can think that it's a magic wand, but when you come to the execution of it, it becomes very real that there's a lot of work that goes into it. So that comes, especially with our environment, our industry where it's highly regulated. So what are some of the challenges that you guys are facing, and what are the great opportunities that you have also taken advantage of in trying using generative AI for some of the financial products that you guys have? So I'll start off with you, Francois, from your side.
Thanks. So Marianne, I think let's start with opportunities. So I think if we look at the multimodal type of characteristics that Gen AI currently presents, where it constantly learns and where it takes feedback from or reinforcement from human learning. I mean, anyone here, if you go on to ChatGPT now and you say, how do you steal a Ford Bucky? Sorry, guys. It's going to come back and say, I would highly recommend that you don't do that, you know. So it's that ability to constantly learn, and I think that's where the opportunities are, is the amalgamation of the various models, so text to video, video to text, etc., and those models that's coming through, and I think that's going to play a massive role in the future from an opportunity perspective. I think the other one that I've mentioned and a journey that we're certainly on is this kind of omni-channel, where you're moving from multi-channel to omni-channel type of journey, and through omni-channel, so not just a buzzword around it. And then lastly is just faster innovation. Faster innovation in products, faster innovation in services. And but again, that comes with a very different mindset. It comes with a staff member that takes accountability and actually wants to do that change where the tacky hits the tar. And I think that then becomes quite a big one. I think from a challenge perspective, it's around credit decisioning. So being able to explain to a customer why this decision was taken, being able to look at privacy from a customer perspective, and then that whole control type of dynamic kind of comes in around who has given you autonomy and authority to kind of do this on my behalf type of thing. So I think that's going to be some of the challenges in a highly regulated environment that we're going to have to kind of figure out on this journey that we're on for all banks. And I think it's for all players across the board. And I think the next one for us is really going to be around the skill set that's needed from a staff perspective to kind of really embrace this and adopt it. Because if you think about prompt engineering is going to be a new skill that you will have to learn if you don't have it already. My wife and my daughter is 50 times better than what I am, so I kind of go to them for a lot of the stuff that I actually need. So I think it's just that new skill set, that we now need to embrace, and we now need to almost impart and build out within our organizations.
So thanks for that, in terms also highlighting the different challenges that you guys are having. And then Ridwaan, from your side, what are you guys facing there?
Thanks, Marianne. I think when we think about the AI capabilities and how we deploy them within the organization, there's obviously the traditional stuff around risk, security, privacy, customer privacy, conduct risk, etc., that we have to be concerned about. But now we've got to take this lens of, letting AI loose within the ecosystem and then applying those same lenses. But I think there are a number of broader lenses. I was reading a WEF article a couple of weeks ago talking about human-centric design around AI. There's massive concerns around job impact. What is going to happen to economies in Africa? There's a concentration of skill and capability in the space in Western economies, and obviously we see the rise of the East and China and India coming along as well. So how does this affect us in Africa? I think there's obviously massive ethics and bias considerations that we have to be aware of. There's legislation coming out, that is driving some of this, but there's also just good practice that we have to be aware of. I was talking to a group of students at a youth innovation thing over the past weekend, and someone made an interesting comment. They said AI models are significantly worse at recognizing black faces than they are at recognizing white faces. And if you're in Africa, how do you deal with that bias where our customer base is largely African? When you start having chatbots interact with them through video, we also saw the launch of ChatGPT 4.0 a couple of weeks ago, which combines voice, video, and chat, and allows you to really interact with the customer in the space of conversational commerce. And what happens when it starts to recognize expressions on black faces differently than it does on white faces? How do you deal with that bias? So I think it's a really deep space, something that organizations really have to pay attention to. I think our approach is we're starting to experiment with these technologies internally with colleague-facing applications where we can control the risk, we can control the appetite, and then we slowly start to dial it up and expose the external customer base to it as well.
Okay, cool. Thanks for that. And Marijke, Nedbank side, what are you guys doing there?
I think Francois and Ridwaan has really said it all. There's just one other challenge that I would see, that we are seeing. Because AI leads to wider democratization, if you do not put the guardrails and the necessary policies and practices in place, things mushroom everywhere. And that can actually lead to further inefficiencies rather than consistency, and poor client experience if not consolidated and at least checked within the guardrails and the policies. Thank you.
Thanks for that. I thought you guys would also mention change management internally rather than externally, right? But those are some of the things that we also need to deal with in terms of how do we actually manage the change, especially when we're deploying these technologies. Just moving off to the last one, there are ethical considerations, and you just touched a bit on it. We are in a very highly regulated, and it's, of course, to safeguard our customers, but ourselves as well. And having to look at the future of AI in the banking sector with all of these ethical considerations, what I just want us to look at is what are some ethical considerations that we need to look at that are associated, considering wearing the risk assessment or risk fraternity. And then also another thing is, how do you guard banks against AI-driven fraud and cyber security threats while also respecting the customer's privacy? So I'll start off with you, Francois.
Thanks. So I touched it earlier around when you start on this journey, you've got to think about today. You've got to think about ethical considerations today and not further down the journey. I think the one that really stands out for me is around that moral agency, that comes along with it. Data privacy and security, obviously very important. But I think for us as an organization, what we've needed to do quite a bit around is how do we empower, how do you educate, and how do you create that awareness within our organization? And this is across all of our countries where we've got presence across the globe now, which is for us critical because you're living in this age where you're living in it right now. So it's not about when it's coming, it's not about the next frontier, it's about the current frontier. And these are some of the critical elements that our staff is facing every single day. So it is absolutely critical for us to drive a lot of that awareness, to your point earlier around the change management, but also give them practical solutions around how they can actually solve for these specific ethical considerations across all of it. Because that's going to be the critical one that actually puts us apart from some of the other competitors or players in the market around that.
Thanks, Marianne. I think kind of leading on from where Francois ended in the stuff I shared. I think the guardrails are important. So you've got to. I think the horse is bolted. Trying to put the cork back in the bottle is not going to work. All of our colleagues are starting to experiment with this technology, whether they're using it for their 7-year-old kids' homework because we can't remember algebra anymore, which I do, or you're using for something else. You've got exposure to these technologies, and when they come to the office, they're expecting to be able to use these technologies in their day-to-day job. Johnson, who's my boss, built that slideshow of Gen AI earlier that you guys saw. So we're expecting to use it, and if we don't give our colleagues exposure to it within a sandbox that they can experiment safely, they're going to do it in unsafe ways. So I think that's important for us. As technologists, we've got to enable this. We've got to become comfortable with it ourselves, and that's about letting our teams experiment and play around with it. But I do think we need to be very clear about the ecosystem that we build around it. Things that have been jargon in the model risk space around things like model measurement and model drift and measuring the outcomes of models are all very, very applicable in the AI space. And so I don't think we can divorce the kind of data governance, model governance concerns that we've had in the past from this new world. We've got to couple them together and treat it as an ecosystem and see AI as an extension of those.
Thanks for that. So what I would like us to do is just thinking about riding this AI wave and speaking about strategy to execution. So just in your last words, just to wrap up the conversation that we've been having, Marijke, what are your last words when it comes to it? What advice can you give in terms of us riding the wave when it comes to AI?
I actually really liked what Johnson said. This is a partnership. And I think if we can use this as transformational opportunities and we partner with this, the opportunities are endless. But do it responsibly.
Francois, from your side?
Thanks. So the first point that I wanted to make is that the use of Gen AI is limitless. The only limiting aspect of it is our mindset and our how do we apply it practically. I think the second one on this journey, and it's not new, but I think that like a key learning for us was strategy and the importance thereof, so building with the end in sight. Number two for me, again, was around understanding your cultural and your operational milieu. And number three for me was, lastly, just around the ethical considerations and how do we think about it today.
Thanks for that. And then Ridwaan, from your side.
Thanks. I think Marijke and Francois have covered kind of the strategy elements. I'll dip into the more practical. I think it's important, as you start enabling these capabilities within the organization, is look for real value cases. Look for things that are going to drive business value and impact the P&L, where you can apply these technologies and, most importantly, productionalize them. We're seeing an inordinate amount of experimentation in this space. I have a team coming to me on a daily basis going, hey, we've had a brilliant idea around AI. We're going to use it to tell us how to do farming. And I go, okay, great. How are you going to take it to production? So look for use cases that can impact the P&L, because your board and your exo are going to challenge you about value. Right? This technology is like cloud. It's like any of the other hype cycles we've faced in the past. How do you derive business value from it? It's not about tech for tech's sake. So I think putting a small COE together, putting your best people on it, giving them the opportunity to learn, and then federating those learnings out into the organization is probably the best way to go.
Thank you for that. We'll literally have 45 seconds in order for us to take a question. So if anybody in the audience has got a question for the panelists. Yeah, sure.
So,
About to say that this looks like an internal organization.
I'm sure I'm going to get an email from TT tomorrow going, I've got a use case. Can we deploy AI? I think the important thing in the collection space is you actually want to deploy this capability preemptively. So by the time you need to pick up a phone and call the customer to say, hey, you're behind on a payment, it's actually too late. There are things you can still do at that point, but we should actually be able to do this preemptively. We should be able to start to identify customers in distress using these capabilities in advance of them going into distress. We should be able to predict where we see the spend pattern, the pattern of payment affecting their profile, and start to predict, and then take interventions that help the customer. As an organization, we did an inordinate amount during COVID to help customers go through this, go through a very difficult time. And, we're in constrained circumstances in the macro today. We've got to take the same lens on it. How do we help customers? How do we take the data that we have and preemptively support them? And then I've also seen some really interesting use cases where using Gen AI to generate language that helps our collections agents and our customer-facing agents interact with the customer, nuancing the language to drive a particular outcome is a really interesting space that Gen AI is starting to play in.
Can I just add, DebiCheck, what we have seen is these two other use cases that we most certainly have seen. AI most certainly helps us with understanding which mandate type to direct to which opportunity, if I can use it like that. So your mandate types for insurance looks very different to your mandate types for you getting a contract with MNO or with the gym. So we've seen that AI has helped us with understanding how to match that. And then secondly, what we have also seen is that if you start using AI, particularly in DebiCheck again, you can start understanding how to make sure that you also respond to the negative flows. Because as you know, DebiCheck is pretty complex, but because it's based on ISO and all the packs and pains, AI really helps with a lot of the negative flows and helping with automation so that we can support our clients better.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks, panelists, for the conversation. And thanks you, everybody.
Thank you.
you.